Ed O'Neill, the man forever etched in TV history as Al Bundy, has finally opened up about the hidden truths behind Married with Children that fans never saw coming. Beyond the sarcastic smirk and iconic 4-touchdown story, O'Neill reveals the exhaustion and guilt that shaped his performance and how the show's cancellation blindsided him in the most unexpected way. With the cast reuniting for charity events and his personal life sparking viral buzz, this revelation proves the Bundy legacy is more complex, raw, and unforgettable than anyone ever imagined. Ed O'Neill finally explains why Al Bundy was so misunderstood. When Ed O'Neill first auditioned for the role of Al Bundy on Married with Children, he noticed that many actors were treating the role as a loud, yelling, Jackie Gibson-type sitcom patriarch. Instead, O'Neill chose a different tack, as if he based Al on one of his uncles. He was resigned, Life was going to be awful. He recalled his aunt telling him at one point, "I ran over the dog in the driveway. He's dead." And his uncle just replied, "What's for dinner?" That sense of weary resignation became his guide for Al Bundy. O'Neill said this choice made Al Bundy not just a buffoon or over-the-top caricature, but someone whose frustration and lack of expectation were built into that character's core. This early decision by O'Neill planted the seeds of why Al Bundy would be misunderstood. People might think they're seeing a buffoon, but in fact, O'Neill was playing a more profound sense of resignation and realism. O'Neill has stated that the sitcom was pushing boundaries that other shows wouldn't. O'Neill acknowledges that networks and critics were unsure if the audience was ready for a character like Al Bundy. He said, "We were just showing up, doing these outrageous scripts. We didn't realize we were creating something that would become part of television history." The gap between the intended portrayal of Al Bundy as a bitter, resigned working-class dad and the perception of him as just an obnoxious sitcom father led to his misunderstanding. The hidden joke in Married with Children that fans never noticed. It's noted that one of the funniest recurring bits in the show is that Al Bundy's name is constantly being misspelt throughout different episodes. Bundy rendered as Birdie, Bundy, etc. The constant misspelling of Al's name in various episodes of Married with Children was one of the show's funniest recurring bits. This practice was done on purpose as a running gag. The misspelling often occurs as a visual detail, headlines, signs, or background text, or a quick, offhand mispronunciation by another character, not usually the focus of the plot. For that reason, many viewers don't consciously register it while watching. The show is full of loud, overt jokes, humor, family dysfunction, workplace misery, so the quiet, background nature of this gag makes it overshadowed. Because the gag is cumulative rather than episodic, it unfolds gradually across multiple episodes. Unless a viewer is paying close attention over time, they may not notice the pattern. The thematic effect of the repeated name-mangling suggests undervaluation, invisibility, or a lack of seriousness. For Al Bundy, a man whose life is full of disappointments, failed high school football glory, a job selling shoes, and a dysfunctional family, the misspelling is a small but telling indication of his status. It subtly reinforces the show's underlying tone of the working-class struggle, the half-lives of dreams and everyday indignities. The joke is not merely a humorous misspelling, it indicates that Al belongs to a world where even minor details often go wrong or are overlooked. Because it's done intentionally and consistently across episodes, it lends a texture of realism, or exaggerated realism, to the setting in real life. Small details matter. In Al's world, even his name is one. Married with Children, the scene that almost got cut. According to a 1990 article in the Deseret News, an early outcome of the show's success had a significant impact on Ed O'Neill's work outside the series. It reports that O'Neill had a dramatic film trimmed because his presence as Al Bundy made test audiences laugh at a profound moment. Because test screening audiences laughed when a serious O'Neill appeared as the prosecutor, the role's been snipped. In other words, the scene wasn't part of the sitcom, but rather from a film outside the series. However, the strength of the sitcom character made the scene seem out of place and distracting to its intended tone. From O'Neill's quote, "I don't feel good about what happened. As an actor, it's kind of frightening. It shows what TV can do to you." He recognized that his sitcom persona was so well known that it negatively impacted his ability to perform in dramatic roles, illustrating a ripple effect of the show's success. Although the article doesn't specify the exact film or scene in full detail, it states that O'Neill was playing a prosecutor in a serious movie, not a sitcom. The test audience's laughter during what should have been a somber moment led the producers to replace or cut his part. The vulnerability is here because his image as Al Bundy was so ingrained that viewers couldn't disconnect him from the sitcom father figure, making dramatic moments with him unintentionally funny. O'Neill's commentary shows that he felt tension between the comedic identity and his hope for serious work. "What I don't want is for these producers in town to think they can't use me in a serious film, especially since all I did before this, Married, was serious." The show illustrates how powerful the sitcom character Al became. Bundy wasn't just a hit on television. He redefined the audience's perception of the actor behind him. What Ed O'Neill regrets about his time on the show. When O'Neill took on the role of Al Bundy, he knew it would be a very untypical sitcom. The dad doesn't win, the family's dysfunctional, and the jokes are crass. His mindset was one of stability and visibility rather than prestige. At this stage, he doesn't publicly reflect on regrets. Instead, he embraces the role. His regret arises later, once the show's success and legacy have matured. One major regret revolves around how he handled a situation with co-star Amanda Bierce, who played Marcy Darcy. O'Neill described how a cast photo op for TV Guide excluded Bierce and another cast member, and Bierce expected him to advocate for them. O'Neill admits that he should have handled it differently. Rather than diplomatically saying, "I'll talk to the producers," he bluntly told them he couldn't fix it, and that's a source of regret. He said, "I should have done that. That's my regret." The incident reveals a regret tied to cast dynamics and his reaction under pressure, choosing the show's broader image over representing a co-star personally. A further regret stems from how the relationship with Amanda Bierce later deteriorated. O'Neill recounts that he was not invited to Bierce's wedding, and he felt hurt and reacted angrily. He said, "If I had to do it over again, I would have said, 'Amanda, all the best. It's your call. Best wishes to you.' But instead, I lashed out. That's my biggest regret." This shows O'Neill's regret not just for the original cover incident, but for how he handled the ensuing personal fallout with his anger, his words, and his failure to step back or apologize in a softer way. Ed O'Neill finally reveals what most fans never figured out about Married with Children. In Vacation, the Griswold family drives from Chicago toward Wally World in their signature green station wagon, the Wagon Queen family truckster. There's a specific aerial freeway shot in the film showing the station wagon with luggage on the roof exiting an interchange in the Chicago region. When Married with Children premiered in 1987, its opening credits included a freeway or expressway shot over the Chicago area. According to sources, the opening title shot of the interchange in Married with Children is taken from National Lampoon's Vacation, and the Griswold's green station wagon is visible. Another analysis notes the show's opening sequences use unused footage from National Lampoon's Vacation for the highway scene. The shot is a very brief moment in the sequence and happens while the credits are rolling, and viewers are often focused on the theme song and actors' names and may not be scrutinizing the background details. Unless one is familiar with specific visuals of Vacation, Truckster Wagon, the Chicago interchange, the connection won't be obvious. Many fan discussions highlight it as something I never noticed until much later. For example, Reddit threads noting, "The opening station wagon on the freeway is the Griswold's wagon from Vacation. The reuse of the truckster footage is a subtle Easter egg and it links the Bundy show's world of suburban and middle-class dysfunction with the Griswolds' road trip gone wrong. Well, both involve family frustration, old dreams, and chaotic humor. Al Bundy's secret personality revealed by Ed O'Neill. When auditioning for Al Bundy, Ed O'Neill chose not to play him as a loud, triumphant sitcom father. Instead, he described his approach, "I saw Al Bundy as one of my uncles." In this interview, O'Neill contrasts his approach with typical sitcom dads, saying he built Al on resignation rather than high energy. By doing this, O'Neill implicitly reveals that Al's secret personality is not just a buffoonish shoe salesman, but a man who has accepted defeat and who expects life to disappoint him. That underlying resignation gives Al more depth than mere cynicism. In a 1991 article, O'Neill explained, "I never think of him as me. Even with my wife, we never talk about it. I never imitate Al. We never discuss it. It's like another thing." He also said, "The thing I find uplifting about it, in some horrible way, is that all of us in marriage must settle for less than our minds tell us we want. Al, who is even less satisfied than most, has to constantly settle for less." These remarks reveal the secret personality of Al Bundy, character built on resigned frustration, unfulfilled aspiration, and settling for what is rather than what could be. The humor covers this up, but beneath the jokes is a man who feels beaten by life. Over the course of the show, Bundy is shown repeatedly returning to his past glories, the 4 touchdowns in one game myth, and then being forced back into the mundanity of selling women's shoes. O'Neill recognized this dichotomy. The difference between the past and present defines Al Bundy's inner self. The moment that defined Married with Children, according to Ed O'Neill. When he first took on the role of Al Bundy, he recognized that Married with Children was not going to be a typical happy family sitcom. Instead, it would showcase a working-class father who struggles, is dissatisfied, and expects things to go wrong. He said he thought the show would be canceled early because they were making fun of all sorts of people. This early view signals that O'Neill regarded the show as aiming to push the boundaries of the sitcom family narrative. In a 2024 interview, O'Neill specifically pointed to a scene in which he refuses his wife's request to go upstairs after an argument, saying, "It was the only show we did in 265 shows where she was wrong." He said, "I know I was wrong." I said, "Yeah." She said, "I apologize." I said, "Great." She said, "Can we go upstairs?" I said, "No, because after all, I wasn't even wrong there." O'Neill argues that most sitcoms treat marriage in a rosy, ideal fashion. For O'Neill, this scene crystallizes the show's arrangement. Al Bundy is a man who's accepted his lot and doesn't pretend otherwise, and the show uses humor to reflect that acceptance rather than escape from it. According to O'Neill, that scene allowed the show to speak to viewers on a different level. "We started talking about stuff that wasn't exactly part of our marriage, and it was like a bomb went off around the country. The fact that a husband and wife might not find each other widely exciting after a number of years." Ed O'Neill shares the story nobody knew about the pilot episode. After filming the original pilot, O'Neill and the producers determined there was a problem with the chemistry, specifically between the Bundy parents and the children in the first version. O'Neill himself approached the producers and requested that the child roles be recast. He believed the actors, originally cast as Kelly and Bud, lacked the right dynamic with the parents. Consequently, the roles of Kelly and Bud were recast, and the original kids, Tina Caspary and Hunter Carson, were replaced by Christina Applegate and David Faustino. All scenes involving the children in the pilot were reshot with new actors. O'Neill remarked on how the pilot hit the tone and character he wanted, the self-deprecating, resigned father who expects the worst and handles it with sarcasm. For example, he'd come home from work one day and the wife said, "I ran over the dog in the driveway." He also noted the moment when the kids' casting wasn't working as a sign that the show needed a sharper edge, while the parents' portrayal of the world of failure and dissatisfaction required child actors who could match that slightly absurd real tone. In addition, O'Neill acknowledged the network's skepticism at the pilot stage. That tension forced the cast and creators to up the specificity of the characters and tone, which arguably strengthened the eventual series. Because of the recasting and reshooting prompted by O'Neill's intervention, the family dynamic in the series tightened. The faster banter, the sharper sarcasm, and the more credible dysfunction between parents and kids all flowed from that pilot correction. How a forgotten prop became legendary on the show. From early in the show's run, the Bundy living room couch made an appearance in almost every episode. Its presence was central. The dad, Al Bundy, played by Ed O'Neill, frequently slumped into it after work, watched TV, held his remote, and engaged in family moments, many of which were dysfunctional. This is noted in episode transcripts. For example, Season 6, God's Shoes, shows the family together on the couch. Commentary on the show's set design confirms the couch was used consistently throughout the 11-season run and became a recognized symbol of the series. As the show developed, the couch transcended being just furniture and became an integral part of the show's character. Articles about iconic TV couches list the Bundy couch among the most memorable on television, noting how Bundy's relationship with it, remote in hand, slumped posture, defined his character. A detailed prop listing reveals that the actual remote control Al uses on the couch was later sold as a collector's item. One pivotal episode illustrates how the couch itself became part of the storyline. Season 8, Episode 14, Sofa So Good, shows Kelly's boyfriend destroying Peggy's couch while Bundy and Peg are away, and the kids scramble to replace it. The fact that only 2 of those couches were ever made is referenced in the episode's dialogue. Because the couch was so iconic and familiar to viewers, the storyline about it becoming ruined and needing replacement instantly turned the couch from a background fixture into a central plot device. The fan community still discusses this episode because it elevated the couch to a character in its own right, showing how much the prop mattered to the show's identity. Ed O'Neill talks about a line fans still quote wrong. On Reddit, fans of the show compile a list of memorable Bundy lines. One fan writes, "Peg, did you miss me? Al Bundy, Al, with every bullet so far." However, in interviews, O'Neill has pointed out that some of the lines fans remember aren't always verbatim from the script. They've changed in memory, been paraphrased, or been misremembered. On the show, O'Neill notes how fans connect strongly with Al's one-liners, insults, and grumbles. He's discussed how his character saying something crisp and funny often sticks with people. In an earlier interview, he remarked that over time, he noticed people quoting lines from the show, but sometimes with slight variations. He doesn't appear to be upset by the misquoting. Instead, he seems amused by how the lines enter the culture and get slightly altered in popular memory. He once said, "I used to say things like, 'My name's not Al,' you know, and then I just kind of went, 'Okay, so you're all right?'" Yep, this reference shows his awareness of how strongly the character and his lines became part of the fan lexicon. Memory of the sitcom tends to simplify or sharpen dialogue in recall so that a witty line might get trimmed or reshaped in memory. Since Bundy's character delivered many pithy, biting lines in rapid succession, viewers often recall the core humor rather than the exact wording. The cultural spread of quotations via jokes, memes, or social media posts can distort the original phrases even further. O'Neill's comment about fans calling him Al instead of Ed reflects the merging of his character identity in lines and public perception. The untold struggle behind making Married with Children hilarious. When the Married with Children pilot script circulated in 1986, the executives of the show thought it was too negative and too dirty for primetime. While most sitcoms celebrated happy, wholesome families, The Cosby Show, Family Ties, meanwhile, this one mocked the American dream. The co-creators of the show, Ron Levitt and Michael Moy, wanted to flip every sitcom trope, like the dad would be broke, bitter, and frustrated, while the wife would be lazy but confident, and the kids wild. O'Neill, a classically trained stage actor, almost didn't get the job. He was known for drama, not comedy. At his audition, he transformed the part by slumping his shoulders, sighing and shuffling to the couch with a physical Al Bundy. He later admitted, "I based Al on my uncle, and he was the kind of guy who expected things to go wrong, and usually they did." The producers realized that O'Neill's authenticity and his ability to play defeat were the secrets to making the misery funny. The first two sessions were a fight between the writer's edgy version and Fox's nervous censors. Some lines were often cut or rewritten at the last minute. O'Neill recalled, "The network didn't know if America was ready for it. Honestly, neither did we. The tension created a unique rhythm, like jokes written fast, rewritten under pressure, and delivered with raw spontaneity." In 1989, activist Terry Rakolta launched a national boycott against the show for immorality. The controversy backfired, and the ratings of the show skyrocketed. O'Neill later said, "That boycott saved us. It turned us into rebels, and people loved that we weren't afraid to be offensive." Fans are shocked by this off-camera confession. Most fans know Ed O'Neill for playing the sitcom patriarch Al Bundy on Married with Children, a role rooted in comedic frustration rather than crime. After being cut from the Pittsburgh Steelers during the 1969 training camp, O'Neill returned to his hometown in Ohio, facing financial struggles. Though the period was tough, he did not consider illegal activities. Instead, with the support of his family and a desire for a new direction, he pivoted to acting. This choice eventually led him to the iconic role of Al Bundy. The character's defining traits of failure, regret, and life's disappointments resonate more deeply, knowing O'Neill himself faced significant crossroads early in his career. His authentic portrayal of a defeated shoe salesman partly stems from these real-life struggles, illustrating that the comedic path was not his obvious or easy route, but ultimately became his distinctive and successful one. Ed O'Neill remembers the craziest day on set. Ed O'Neill has spoken about the set of Married with Children as having a very high-energy, unpredictable vibe. He noted that they were pushing buttons nobody had ever pushed on network TV before. The cast and crew often felt like they were working on the edge, as the writing, the jokes, and the network reactions all contributed to a sense that anything can happen on set. So when O'Neill refers to the craziest day on set, it's within the context of a show that already had a reputation for breaking rules. One of the most infamous crazy days occurred during the filming of Season 4, when Sam Kinison guest starred on the show. On the first day on set, Kinison mooned the cast and crew. The next day, he arrived late to set, then attempted to make amends by catering lunch, bringing people to serve lunch, and giving the crew nightsticks as a kind of gift. At another point on set, Kinison allegedly waved a gun at the director, Jerry Cohen, over a late-night visit by the director to his house. It was an incident that obviously escalated the chaos. This day stands out as craziest because of how far beyond a typical sitcom set this went, with gun threats and mooning all in one production week. While these stories are mostly about others, Kinison, the fact that O'Neill remembers them highlights how unusual they were even in the aberrant world of Married with Children. In his longer interview with the Television Academy, O'Neill talks about being on set in front of a live audience and notes how the unpredictable set environment shaped the show. This day helps explain why the show felt so raw and unfiltered compared to other sitcoms, as the actual production environment wasn't tightly buttoned down. The secret behind Al Bundy's iconic shoes. Al Bundy worked as a woman's shoe salesman at the fictional Gary's Shoes and Accessories for Today's Women. The shoes aren't just props, they're a symbol of his dead-end job, his frustrations, his life working the dump rather than his dreams. He once was a high school football star. In an interview, actor Ed O'Neill said he based Bundy on an uncle who expected things to go wrong and often was right. From the beginning then, the shoes are not glamorous, but they're part of the working-class grind. This establishes a subtle tone, suggesting that these shoes reflect Al Bundy's identity and failures beyond just his job. Many jokes revolve around shoes, like women complaining about the wrong sizes, returning shoes, shoes falling apart, etc. For example, a woman of a larger stature entered the shoe store today and expressed her desire for a size 5 shoe. I proceeded to fit her foot into a shoe, episode's God's Shoes. In one episode, Elle calls out cheaply made shoes. These shoes are so cheaply constructed that only women who wear them are beggars and wives of shoe salesmen. Secret behind the iconic shoes is that they were props that allowed daily jokes about Elle's misery and the absurdity of his job. They represented his humiliation, working for a shoe store, dealing with bad customers, bad footwear, and the dreams he once had. These shoes are part of the brand identity of Al Bundy, the shoe salesman who's defeated every day, yet still shows up. The placement of Ed O'Neill's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in front of a shoe store underscores how much the show embraced that shoe salesman identity. The mundane brown leather shoe look of Al's footwear, rather than flashy designer, subtly reinforces his everyman status and stuck-in-his-career condition. Fans may forget the shoe salesman part isn't incidental, but it shapes every facet of the character's misery, jokes, and identity. How the show surprised even its own cast members. When Ed O'Neill, Katie Sagal, Christina Applegate, and David Faustino first got the scripts, they thought Married with Children would be just another short-lived sitcom. Ed O'Neill recalled in a Television Academy interview that the audition scene with Al Bundy coming home, sitting on the couch and putting his hands in his pants, was something I didn't think they'd actually let on television. The actors were told the show would be gritty and anti-Cosby, but none of them realized how revolutionary that tone would become. The pilot's first tapping shocked the studio audience with laughter and gasps, confirming they were onto something different. Ed said it wasn't polished or moral, it was raw, and people couldn't believe they were allowed to laugh at it. The cast realized during filming that they weren't making a traditional sitcom, but they were creating TV history by mocking the idealized family formula. But in Season 2, Married with Children became a cultural phenomenon. In 1989, a Michigan housewife named Terry Ricolta started a public campaign to boycott the show, claiming it was indecent. Cast initially thought this would destroy the series. Instead, ratings skyrocketed. Ed later said, "We thought we were done. Then all of a sudden we were on the front page of every paper. The protest made us more popular than ever." Katie Sagal admitted the backlash stunned everyone. "We didn't know America would love us for being bad." Scandal intended to cancel the show ended up saving it. Even the actors were shocked when controversy became their greatest advertisement. What viewers never knew about the Bundy family home. The Bundy residence, portrayed on screen, is located at 641 Castle Lane, Deerfield, Illinois, for the exterior establishing shots. However, the interior scenes, the living room, kitchen, and upstairs bedrooms, were filmed on a studio soundstage in California. The exterior house and interior sets don't match in layout or structure. What viewers often don't notice is that the front door, driveway, exterior windows, and two-story look of the house simply don't map accurately to the interior arrangement of rooms. Fans have pointed out that the windows from upstairs rooms appear to fall into the backyard patio, even though this would not happen in a real house. On the show, the Bundy home address is given variously as 9764 Jeopardy Lane and sometimes 9674. According to the fandom page, Jeopardy Lane is a fictional street in the Chicago suburbs. Because the exterior house is in Deerfield, Illinois, a real suburb north of Chicago, the show used real-world visuals but fictional street names. Viewers seldom realize the blending as a real house and fictional address and studio interior equals the Bundy's family home. One of the most persistent behind-the-scenes questions is, how could Al Bundy, a shoe salesman at a women's shoe store, afford a large suburban two-story house with a yard, garage, and so on? Fans have pointed this out. Several episodes and fan commentary suggest that the house is older, worn, in a less desirable neighborhood with maintenance issues, which sort of justifies the disparity. Like the driveway is made of ground-up women's shoes, a gag in one episode. It's implied that the house has substandard wiring, cracked walls, etc. Thanks for watching Past Paradise, where Hollywood legends come home. If you enjoyed today's look into the topic, Ed O'Neill finally reveals what most fans never figured out about Married with Children, then don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. Got a star or story you want next? Drop it in the comments. Until then, keep the nostalgia alive, only on Past Paradise. If you've watched the video till here, that means you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell icon